TikTok isn't new anymore, and most brands have understood its potential. But turning that potential into actual business results, that's where things get interesting. Today, we're going to talk about what it takes to win on TikTok, from strategy to creative, from team structure to measurement, with guests who have seen both sides. Thank you for being here today. I'm really excited about this conversation, first of all, because I know very little about TikTok, and my excuse is that I'm in B2B, but I know that is no excuse. But I'm really happy because I have two true experts and also lovers of TikTok, which I've understood is also kind of prerequisite to understand what TikTok is about. So I have Christina, a digital media specialist at Clas Ohlson. Clas Ohlson is a leading home improvement retailer. So if you have an apartment, if you have a house, if you have a plant, really, you know it. And Lina is a client director in strategy at SplayOne, which is a Nordic content agency and also TikTok partner. Well, Christina, let's start with you. Can you tell me a little bit about your role at Clas and also how your story with TikTok started for you personally, but also at Clas?
Yes, so I work strategically with our social media and YouTube channels across all our markets in Sweden, Norway, and Finland. And I started about 2 years ago at Clas Ohlson. And when I started, we were already present on TikTok. However, as the specialist of the platform, I initiated a bit of a different approach to our presence on TikTok. So already 2 years ago, we started tweaking our content because we existed on the platform, but I wanted us to actually do it really well and to grow. And my personal story with TikTok started during the pandemic 20, when the world was going through it and everyone was home a lot, isolated and feeling alone. And I was also part of that. So I decided to try out the TikTok app and immediately found thousands and millions of people, strangers actually, that I could relate to, that had a common interest with me. And so that's how I found my community on TikTok.
Nice. Interesting. And when was the tipping point where you understood the Clas Ohlson that TikTok was really strategically important for you as a company?
Yeah, so I think it really started getting noticed at the company and being appreciated when we saw an increase in performance and when we started noticing that customers started referring to our content when looking for products in store. So they were showing our content in store.
Like with the phone, they would go and like...
Exactly.
Wow. That's like the dream, like the saves actually being then something that you pick up instantly.
Yes. Yeah. As well as the media started mentioning us and recognizing us for our presence on the platform.
Wow, okay. TikTok is new, but it's not new in a way, right? And do you feel like there's brands and advertisers are changing the way they approach the platform? And do you see any trends in investments on the platform as well?
I feel like TikTok is kind of on the same journey that Instagram was like 8 years ago. That people were like, oh, but we need to be on Instagram. Or brands would be like, we need to be on Instagram. And we would be like, okay, so why? Because we want to be on Instagram. We want to have an Instagram account because people are asking for it. I feel like that is kind of the same way where we're at with TikTok now, that a lot of brands feel like they need to be on TikTok because they know that there is a lot of potential and they have a lot of like their target audience on the platform, but they're not really sure how to approach it. But I feel like 2 years ago, we had to push our way through and be like, it's not just a song and dance app, it's not just for kids, whereas now the majority of clients actually understand what it is, they're not just sure how to approach it. So I feel like that is a big difference now, and that people actually need help not just to get there, but how to get there.
I feel like a lot of brands, they do understand they need to be on TikTok and TikTok is important, but my perception, and maybe you think differently, but my perception is that they're still blocked. It's still difficult to be on TikTok in a way.
I think a lot of brands have this, whereas 2 years ago, people maybe thought like, oh, but it's only humor or it's only song and dance or it's only kids. Now I think that they're like, oh, but it has to like look ugly or it has to be just jokes or it just has to be memes and like very edgy Gen Z language that you're not really understanding. And I think that is kind of the way now that we can help them because, as you said, you found your community on TikTok during the pandemic. And on TikTok now, there's more communities than you can even think of. Myself, for example, I'm a knitter. and there's like trends within the knitting community, or there's like a discussion within the knitting community. But my friend who doesn't knit doesn't know what I'm talking about, where my whole For You page could be that. And in the same way, there's like run talk, run clubs, there's food talk for like foods and recipes. And then, of course, the community that maybe got the biggest kind of impact on, I was going to say the real world, like TikTok is a real world, but like face-to-face world is book talk. Whereas now you can't enter a bookshop without there being a whole section of like trending on TikTok and like romantasy. That whole genre has elevated itself through the help of TikTok, where 3 years ago people were like, oh, the physical books are dying. But now with the help of this like micro video platform, it's actually rising in sales and I actually saw that in Sweden last year was the first time ever that like physical book sales was increasing instead of decreasing since like the 70s. So it's actually doing something. And what we do at SplayOne all the time is trying to find your own community to be a part of, whether that be like food talk or run talk, or it's people who work in home improvement or who want to grow a garden. Whatever it is, if we can just find the community and be a part of that, we know that we're going to get effect.
Yeah, and we're going to come back to the concept of community, which is something I found existed only a few days ago talking to you guys. But so what do you think what are the main blockers when a brand wants to go and do more than existing on TikTok? You mentioned like they think it's too much about just being fun.
I think they feel like they just need to be funny, or that it needs to look ugly, which is like they're going away from their brand values or like their brand book, which is not the case. It just can't be an ad. I read somewhere that it takes like 3 muscles in your thumb to like switch videos on TikTok to like do the scrolling motion, which is like, it's so little. That's all. And then the energy is dead, or like your attention is gone. So as a brand, it doesn't have to be ugly. It has to be platform native, but that doesn't mean that it has to be like grainy or shaky or that you can't use any brand elements. It's more like, don't put the logo on the first 3 seconds, but rather have content that is so interesting that you're actually going to watch more than 3 seconds.
Yeah, makes sense. And from a brand perspective, Christina, what was your experience when you launched or relaunched TikTok Clas? What was the main challenge that you had to have it up and running the way you wanted?
Yeah, so I would say the main challenge was the content, like Lina is saying, because Clas Ohlson is a really big and well-known brand. It's existed for 107 years, so there's a lot of heritage there. And that's not easy then to make that kind of content change. It's a very sensitive topic. So we wanted to become more TikTok native without compromising on the brand values, staying true to the brand, as you mentioned. But I feel like change can be scary, but it's also necessary, especially within marketing. So yeah, that was the main challenge.
And how did you go about solving it?
Well, we started off peu à peu, I would say. And it's a constant challenge and process to balance being TikTok native and staying true to the brand. So we're always thinking about those elements in everything we do, everything we publish.
Makes sense.
But how do you guys work with like logos or branding? Like because that is something that we work a lot with our clients at SplayOne, for example. We work a lot with Arla Foods, where we have Arla Mat, where we never use the logo, but we also always use Arla's products. But how do you guys, with Clas, as you have such a wide assortment, how do you guys work with branding and like brand elements on TikTok to make sure that it feels Clas Ohlson when you're watching it?
Yeah, so we made some changes, big changes to our content. And for example, we don't use logos in any of our creatives. However, we always use blue text for the brand recognition purpose. We don't use our brand sound in the creatives. However, we have a handful of popular sounds, royalty-free, that we use in all our creatives, also for brand recognition on the platform. We work with UGC, but we don't use voices or faces. And we also mix in our studio-produced images, but that we natify to TikTok by adding hooks and TikTok expressions. So that's the mix and the balance that we're trying to keep.
Yeah. And I mean, what you just talk about, all these elements, they're so native of TikTok. TikTok is different from, Instagram and Facebook. It's more like an entertainment platform rather than kind of a social media. And we did launch this research just a few days ago together with TikTok around what are the different creative elements that enhance the performance of your ads specifically. And there were some of the elements that you guys mentioned, like the absence of logo or the absence of brand elements and the sound and all of those elements that are really native to the platform. And it's interesting to understand, what do you recommend your clients, for example, when they have to create their content for TikTok? Do you have some guidelines or some best practice that you always use and suggest them?
I mean, like, the number one is make good content.
Yeah.
Which is like too easy. Just do it. But we like often, unfortunately, there's not like a secret formula to TikTok that like this always works, but we know what doesn't work.
Yeah.
And that is like having just simple things as like being overly lit. Like if you can see that a setup is like there's 4 different lights on this and like the shadows are perfect and exact, people are gonna be like, oh, commercial. And then they're going to scroll. Another is, like we just talked about, like the logo in the beginning, because I know all of these platforms are always saying like, oh, make sure your brand elements are in the first 3 seconds. Like you need to make sure that it's recognizable from the start because people are then scrolling away. Whereas I know that people are not scrolling away after 3 seconds anyway. They're scrolling away the first 3 seconds because you have your logo there and it's not interesting. There's nothing for them to see. So that is like also one thing. Like, of course, we're going to have brand elements. Of course, it's going to be super important to tell that like the product that we're promoting or the brand that we're promoting needs to be like the hero and needs to be the enabler of the content. But it can't just be like a logo the first 3 seconds and then there's no reason for you to keep watching. So I think that is one big part of it. The other is just like a lot of people when we're talking TikTok and a lot of brands when we're talking TikTok is talking about trends. And that is a key thing to kind of succeed. We have a lot of clients at SplayOne where we work with that we could do quick and easy like jump on trends that are happening, but we're also very picky, being like, okay, if we can't do this right, then we're not going to do it because that's going to hurt us more than it's giving us something good. For example, and I'm not sure if you're going to know this if you don't have TikTok, but there was a huge trend a couple of years ago with like a small guy who said like it's corn, and that turned into a song. It's corn. Yeah, I'm not gonna sing for you right now, but it was huge. So he was like interviewed on the street. He talked about corn. This became like someone remixed it. It became a meme and like a song. Us now using that song would be like ironic, but if we used it 2 months after or like 3 weeks after, then it's just like, okay, but you just don't know what's actually
you
relevant.
Missed the trend.
Yeah, you missed it. Or you like, because now you can play with those kind of old things and being like a sense of humor or being like, oh, we know this is old, that's why we're doing it. Whereas if you're too close to it and it's just not relevant, then it's actually being like, we really don't know what our community is talking about. So I think that is also like a key thing that we need to jump on trends, but don't jump on it now. Like something that's been trending for 2 weeks, then we go into production next week, then we have to edit. There's a lot of feedback rounds and then we post it in 4 weeks. Then it's dead. It's not relevant. And we talk about like missing the train and also just doing the trends that are relevant to you and where your product actually can do something.
What's a good time frame for you to jump on a trend? It's like 5 days, 7 days?
I think that depends a lot. Like that's why we have a lot of clients that are like retainer clients where we do monthly productions and those kind of things. A lot of the times we would be able to just like if we are able to go out, like film it in an afternoon, edit it the next day and then post it in like 48 hours, then we think that we can do it. If it takes more than that, we're a bit hesitant, but we don't have a secret formula that like if a sound has more than this many usages within this period, it's more like what's generally trending on the platform. And that is what you get from actually being on the platform, which I also think is super important. And that's also how I justify that I scroll on TikTok every day. Like it's part of my job, actually.
Of course. Okay. And Christina, from a brand point of view, like, have you seen in terms of creatives something that for you guys worked really well and maybe something that didn't work so well?
Yes, so I guess it's been a process and we've learned along the way what works and doesn't work for us. And as I mentioned before, we've made many changes already with the color blue and with the sound, the type of content we use. So it's definitely a mix of content and that works well for us. So mixing up the content, avoiding logos, but still having the blue present, other brand elements present in the creatives, but in a more discreet way. So I think that's been a part of the content journey.
Okay. And you both talked about this concept of communities, which is extremely relevant. And there are many, and they can be different for different brands. Christina, do you guys have some communities that are more important or interesting for you, and how do you engage with them?
Yeah, so communities are very important. And as we have a wide range of products across multiple categories within Clas Ohlson, of course, we'll have different type of communities and different people interested in different categories. We have a lot of communities we're present in. We want to be there to inspire and entertain and engage with the community, be a part of their conversations. And we also comment on users' organic content in order to tap into those specific communities. And there are many different ones, but some examples that are big for us is clean talk, food talk, as you mentioned, meal prepping, organizing, gaming, DIY, travel talk, and so on. So there's a lot of communities, and we love creating content for our communities. Yeah, we hope that they like enjoying it and seeing what we share with them.
Nice. And so is you who comment on all the different content from...
Yes, it's me.
Okay.
And some customer service as well, depending on if it's more comment community-wise or if it's a product-specific question, because then I won't be the best person to answer on the products. So it's a mix, and we are mentioned in a lot of content, so I can't comment on everything. But it's really fun to see how something picks up quite quick. Where conversation is happening in the moment. So it's fun to be on TikTok and see what people think and say about us as well.
Right. And Lina, how do you guys, because I guess many brands, when they heard about community, they're like, okay, we want to do that too. But how do you actually do it? What's the best way to engage with communities?
I feel like, well, the best practice is what you guys are doing as well, is actually taking part, being having your brand account where you're regularly posting, you're looking at the trends on the platform, but you're also actually a part of it. Community marketing is such a big part of it, and also community management. We usually at SplayOne, my colleague Lina usually talks about if you're not opening the comments, you're missing 50% of the fun and of the conversations. And that is also super important. So we think that when brands, of course, if we can decide everything, then yeah, you're going to have an organic TikTok account. This is your boosting strategy. We're going to put at least 15 minutes per day to do community management, so that we're not just answering the questions we're getting, but also just scrolling, being part of your community, liking, commenting on what stuff other people are doing. But I think that the shortcut into these communities is influence marketing. Because then you know that if you can identify the either thought leaders within the communities or just strong people within it that is an active part of their community, and you can put your product in that in a very relevant way, and in a way that doesn't feel forced, then you've gained so much within that community. And you can kind of get the perks of TikTok without actually having to post organic TikTok content from a brand perspective. Because I know a lot of clients or a lot of brands that we talk to might want to be on TikTok, but they have a overarching policy that they can't post organic content, or they can't post anything with their brand as the sender. But it's okay to do influence marketing or to do just paid. So that is kind of the shortcut, I would say. Just finding someone who understands the influencers and the micro creators who understands that community that you need to be part of, and then working with them and making them do content with your products in a way that's relevant.
I mean, from what I understood with my little knowledge of TikTok, is that there are many, there's many ways of creating content. Is via influencer, UCG, or your own, as you said, you produce your own content. And so your content mix can be pretty diverse. What do you guys use at Clas Ohlson in your content mix? And why do you use one content type or another one at certain time of the year?
Yes, so as I previously mentioned, we work with different types of content, and we use a lot of UGC, but without faces and voices. And we also use a lot of in-house produced studio content, which is produced in Dalarna in our studio. And I myself film and cut some content sometimes. And we also work with influencer collaborations and TikTok creators, of course, but those we use more in spurts, so it's not a part of the always on. Sometimes we also work with external content agencies for TikTok specifically produced content. So when it's more campaign production. So it's different sources of content, and it works really well. I think maintaining that mix means that we also reach different people, different users that consume different type of content, and it also shows how diverse we can be and how broad we want to reach people and use the platform to do it.
Makes sense. And we talked a little bit about during the prep call about this concept that I had of organic on TikTok. And you told us that, well, you don't do organic the way I understood organic on the platform. But can you explain that a bit? Because I think it was very interesting take on how to create content for TikTok.
Yeah, so what I mean when I say organic, I mean, of course, create TikTok native content, but it's always in the purpose of using it as paid content. So we have a TikTok profile and we publish content on there, but it's not specifically produced for only organic use.
And I think that's super interesting because I asked you, are you posting organically? You said no. And I was like, but you have an account. I can see that you posted organically. You're like, oh yeah, but everything is boosted. And from my point of view, as long as you have an organic presence, i.e. if you're posting content on like in your feed, then you have like an organic account and you have an organic presence, then of course you're going to have to boost it to be successful. And I think that is a big part of it, that a lot of brands, when they're not really used to the platform, they talk a lot about going viral and they're like, oh, but if we have an organic strategy, then why are we not having 100,000 views after 2 months? Or like why this video flopped because they only got 3,000 organic views. But then they're comparing themselves to brands that are boosting, because to be able to actually reach out with the great native content that you're doing, then boosting it and using it in Spark ads is a key thing. Because we usually talk about it as in getting more people to get the chance to see our good content, and then they're following us, and then we're building the organic as well. But you need to have that, I would say, the boosting strategy to actually gain traction. It's not you have to do paid, otherwise you're not getting out at all. Whereas for TikTok, we need that paid, that boosting to get the like spread of it. But then you're like, you can always buy reach, but you earn the watches, you earn the comments, you earn the engagement, and you earn the follows. So even if you're talking about like organic versus paid, having an organic strategy for me doesn't mean that you're not boosting or putting any paid behind it. At the same way as you guys are talking about, you have a paid strategy, but you're posting organically. However, you're not looking at the organic numbers because that's not something that you're measuring.
Yeah, I think it's really interesting what you're saying, because it's a common misconception that organic is just for organic and going viral. It's interesting to hear your point of view on it, and I had a different thought of it.
I can imagine you might get this, we want to go viral quite a lot. That's probably what I would do if I were to work with you guys. I want to go viral.
Yeah.
I want to go viral. But this element of the paid media, but overall how you evaluate TikTok, I think it's really interesting. With our research where we actually evaluated the return on investment of TikTok when using a more advanced attribution compared to more traditional attribution, showed that actually TikTok has a higher value that you could think. How do you guys evaluate TikTok at Clas Ohlson?
So we look at multiple sources. So for the day-to-day performance, we look in the in-platform reporting. We also look at the year-on-year growth over time across the funnel. We do different lift studies. We do A/B testing throughout the year. We also have our MMM reporting, which we do approximately once a year. So it's multiple touch points, and I feel like that's the best for us.
Makes sense. And how do your clients usually evaluate TikTok? Do you feel like they're using the right tools?
I feel like it's going that way. A lot of our clients are working, we're not just in the lower part of the funnel, so we are working, and a lot of our clients understand either from us nagging them about it or from actually knowing that when going into it, that content marketing is how you build strong brands. So a lot of our clients that we work with on a day-to-day basis, they understand the need of building upper funnel or actually like building relationship, where TikTok is a great platform for that. Then as we are more of a content agency, we can help with paid as well, but we often do more of the content parts. And then we're evaluating things like time spent, how like the relationship is growing in terms of how long are they watching, how many comments, how many saves, how many shares, the kind of KPIs that signal how they are reacting to the content and not just getting reached by it. And we can see, for example, when we're working with at SplayOne, we're working with Arla. As I mentioned, we do it a lot. But like if a recipe from Arla gets 500 saves, then we know that and the recipe might highlight their a new cheese, then we know that this is something that people are like watching. But then it's up to our clients to actually do the like MMMs or having the last click. And usually we do I was going to say we do the fun part, which is great content. And then we have like partners, so we work with media agencies that are doing more of the tactical work aimed at conversions. But I feel like a lot of brands are understanding more and more the importance of like the building of relationship. And then, because usually, and this is no news to you, when people are like, oh, but SEO or search was our best conversion channel, I'm always like, okay, but how do they know what to search for? Like that is with the help of content, TikTok, branding, which is what we're actually doing. I feel like a lot of more clients are looking at it that way now as well.
Yeah. And it's interesting you said this about search, because from the study that we just launched, there was actually a halo effect from TikTok to search, which is quite interesting. And it's also, I mean, honestly, if you think about it, it's quite straightforward. You see something on a platform, then you go and Google, right? But until you have proof, then it's very difficult to actually make the case internally.
Yeah, we're going to use that study a lot.
Okay, good. Okay, then I think my last question would be, if you were to talk to a CMO, marketer, digital marketer who is starting with TikTok, doesn't know much about it, so you can take me as an example, what would be your number one recommendation?
So I would say start by spending time on the platform. If you don't understand how the content is consumed, if you don't see the conversations being had and see how people interact with each other, and understand how the platform works and the algorithm and so on, it's going to be challenging to tap into those desired audiences, to be honest. And I think it's important then to go in and explore the platform. But if you can't do that, don't panic. Just work with someone who does. Work with someone who understands the platform, understands the audience, the communities, the content, the consumption. And that will be your way to success.
Yeah, I agree. We're that partner. No, joking, but also not joking. But yeah, no, I totally agree. Like you have to spend time on the platform. But I would say like from a brand perspective or like from a marketer perspective, I would say the number one thing when you're going to start a presence on TikTok is stop looking at demographics. Don't look at your target group as like women 15 to 30 or men 25 plus, because that doesn't really matter. Like TikTok, the algorithm is built up to create these communities because it's going to recommend you videos that people that have similar patterns as you are watching, which means that you're going to enter these like filter bubbles or communities. And within those communities, it doesn't matter if you're 25, you're female, you're 70, or you're like 18. It's the content that works. So instead of talking about demographics, I would talk about like communication target groups or like interest-based target audiences, because that is where you can actually leverage the TikTok, like what is special about TikTok. Because compared to Meta, Meta is based on who you follow, and who you are, and a lot of the content is also based on like your friends or people that you've chosen to follow, whereas on TikTok it's the kind of subjects that you have interacted with or that you are interested in. So if you're shifting your focus from like, oh, we're going to reach women 25 to 30, like of course that is going to be a core, and if you're doing paid, then yes, you can do that and you can add that, but the core and finding out and creating content that actually works is looking at what are they interested in, what makes them care about stuff. It's just because you're a female that's 27, you're not going to be in love with knitting, or if you're like, maybe you're not following me, for example, I love ice hockey and I follow Lul Hockey and SHL. I'm not in the like core demographic target group, but I'm going to watch every single video that shows up on my feed. Like look at the interest, because then it doesn't matter who they are.
Okay, interesting. So you need to spend time on the platform. If you don't like it or if you can't, you need to find someone who likes to spend time on the platform. And you need to stop looking at demographic or target audiences the old way, meaning the demographics.
Yeah, when creating content and when setting a strategy, don't look at just the numbers.
Right. Okay. I think I've learned quite a lot today. Thank you so much for being here and for teaching me about TikTok.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Connecting the Dots, a podcast by Precis. We're a global marketing agency helping brands making smarter decisions across media, creative, tech, and data. If you like what you heard, don't forget to subscribe wherever you get your podcast. And if you want to get more insights from this episode and an exclusive takeover from our guest, go to precis.com and subscribe to Connecting the Dots, the newsletter.